So identity theft and data theft, the detection and prevention. So typically here we will see how the data and other things will be actually done, how the threat to the hardware will come, to the user will come, and many more. What are the common types of hacking, and what are some of the proactive measures? First, what is that security? It is a protection of computer systems and the network. It is not just the systems, it is the networks also. From the information disclosure, you should not disclose any information voluntarily. Theft of or a damage to their hardware, software, or electronic data, as well as from the disruption or misdirection of the services they provide. This is called security. So it performs four important functions for an organization: protects the organization's ability to function, enables the safe operation of applications implemented on the organization's IT system. Then it protects the data from the organization, collects and uses, and safeguards the technology assets in use that the as at the organization. So typically, what are the features of IT security? Three important features. One is confidentiality, another one is integrity, and the availability. When you talk about the confidentiality, one has to assure that the information shared only among the authorized people or the organizations. Then what is an integrity? It is an assurance that the information is authentic and complete. And it also ensures that maintaining and assuring the accuracy and consistency of data over its entire life cycle. Okay, so when you access some data in the beginning or at the end, it should be same. Okay, then availability, it is the assurance that the systems responsible for delivering, storing, and processing the information are accessible when needed by those who need them. So these are some of the important features. Then what are the vulnerabilities? This is very, you should know about this. A vulnerability, then only you will understand these jargons. A vulnerability is a weakness which can be exploited by a threat actor, such as an attacker or a cross privilege to the cross privilege boundaries within the computer system. So, what is a vulnerability? It is a weakness which can be exploited by the threat actor, such as an attacker, to cross privilege the boundary, that is, to perform unauthorized actions within a computer system. And vulnerabilities are classified according to asset class. They're related to what type. Like we have an asset, liquid, real estate, gold, and so on. Like that, in information also there are certain assets. So then, what is a software asset? There is first thing is what is an hardware asset. Okay, hardware means, in a hardware vulnerability means it is susceptibility to humidity or the dust. Okay, or unprotected storage. Okay, unprotected storage, or it may be an overheating. Many things are possible. Okay, then software. It is insufficient testing has been done. Insecure coding, there is actually a separate field on secure coding. Okay, lack of audit trail and a design flaw. Then in network, you have unprotected communication lines, insecure network architectures, and so on. And among the personnel, inadequate recruiting process, inadequate security awareness, and an insider threat. The physical site, it is the area subject to natural disasters like flood or earthquake and interruption to power source. And in case of organizational, it is the lack of regular audits and the lack of continuity plans. So these are some of the vulnerabilities in terms of hardware, software, network, personal, okay, physical site and organization. Then what is a threat? It is a potential negative action or event facilitated by a vulnerability that results in an unwanted impact to a computer system or the applications. So now, any circumstance or an event with the potential to adversely impact an information system through an unauthorized access, disruption, disclosure, modification of data, and or the denial of service. Therefore, you should have something called as a countermeasure. It is a step that you take toward of a threat to protect the user, data, or the computer from the harm. So there are various security threats. One is called identity theft, that is the loss of privacy, exposure to spam, physical injuries, and so on. Hardware means power related problems like theft, vandalism, and natural disasters. Data means in malwares, hacking, cybercrime, and cyber terrorism. These are some of the security threats. One is identity theft, like loss of privacy, exposure to spam, and physical injuries. Hardware threats like power related problems, theft, vandalism, natural disasters. Data means malware, hacking, cybercrime, and cyber terrorism. So these are the common categories of threats and typically the examples. Okay. So now, for example, the acts of human error or the failures. The example is accidents or employees' mistakes. Then the compromises to the intellectual property, maybe with respect to piracy or copyright infringement. Okay. Then deliberate acts of espionage or trespass, which is like unauthorized access and or data protection. Then deliberate acts of information extortion, that is blackmail of information disclosure. Then deliberate acts of sabotage, vandalism, that is the destruction of systems or the information. Then deliberate acts of theft, that is illegal confiscation of equipment and of information. Then deliberate software attacks, which includes virus, worms, macros, denial of service. Then forces of nature, which include fire, flood, earthquake, and lighting. Then deviations in quality of service from service providers like power and WAN service issues. Then technical hardware failures or errors, that is equipment failures. Then technical software failures or errors like bugs, code problems, unknown loopholes. Then technological obsolescence like antiquated or outdated technologies. So there are certain keywords that come across in threats one should be aware. What is called as a spam? It is an unsolicited commercial email or the junk email. Then what do you call it as a cookie? It is a small text file that the web browser put on the computer. Web bugs. It is a small GIF file embedded in a web page or email. Malwares. It is nothing but malicious software. It can be a virus which requires some executables. It worms like self executables, spyware, Trojan horses, then botnets, that is robot networks. Then you also have some shoulder surfing, okay, and hacking like sniffing, that is finding users password, password sharing, password guessing or password capture. Then social engineering like dumpster diving, like phishing emails and wishing, that is phone calls. Then spoofing, these are all the examples of hacking. Then you also have an example of distributed denial of services, then cybercrime and cybersecurity. So let us understand what exactly mean by these things in a very elaborate way. First, you should know what is a denial of service. Here, the attacker sends a large number of connection or the information requests to the target. And so many requests are made that the target system cannot handle them successfully among with others and legitimate requests for the service, and may result in a system crash or merely an inability to perform ordinary functions. That is called as denial of service. Then what do you mean by distributed denial of service? It is an attack in which the coordinated stream of requests is launched against a target from many locations at the same time. So, for example, in a denial of service attack, a hacker compromises a system and uses, okay, in a denial of service attack, the hacker compromises the system and uses that the system to attack the target computer, flooding with more requests for services than the target can handle. So, in a distributed denial of service attack, dozens or even hundreds of computers, which are known as zombies, are compromised, loaded with distributed denial of service attack software, and then remotely activated by the hacker to conduct the coordinated attack. Okay. Then, what do you mean by spoofing? Techniques used to gain unauthorized access whereby intruders send the messages to a computer with an IP address indicating that the message is coming from a trusted host. Okay. Similarly, there is something called man in the middle attack. Here, an attacker snips the packets from the network, modifies them, and inserts them back into the network. This is an example of IP spoofing. IP source is actually IP original IP packet from the hacker system, so it will change the IP source itself. It is a spoofed modified IP packet. So hacker modifies the source address to spoof firewall. The firewall allows the packet in, mistaking it for a legitimate traffic, and spoofed packet slips into the internet to wreak the havoc. Then man in the middle attack. First, a company A attempts to establish an encrypted session with company B. Then the hacker intercepts the transmission and possesses as company B. Okay. And the hacker exchanges his own keys with company A. And the hacker then establishes a session with company B and posing as company A. Finally, the company B sends all the messages to the hacker who receives, decrypts, copies, and forward the copies, possibly modified to company B. So similarly, there is a process of protective measures, that is bolster access control. What is this? This is a phenomena where you are using a strong password system, and you should have a mix of uppercase and lowercase letters, the numbers and the special characters. And also always reset all the default passwords, and finally create a strong access control policy. The second one is keep all the software updated, that is from antivirus software to computer operating system. Ensure that your software is updated. So when a new version of the software is released, the version usually includes fixes for security vulnerabilities. And manual software updates can be time consuming, so use automatic software updates for as many programs as possible. Then standardize the software, keep your systems protecting by standardizing the softwares like operating systems, browsers, media players, and plugins. And ensure that the users cannot install the software onto the system, on your system, without your approval. So you can use the network protection measures also, like you should use install firewalls, ensure proper access controls, use IDS IPS to track potential packet floods, use the network segmentation, use virtual private networks. You have to conduct proper maintenance and so on. So, employee training, sometimes external threats are successful because of an insider threat. So, the weakest link in data protection can be your own employees. So, we have to ensure your employees understand the network security, and employees should be able to identify the threats, and they should also know who to contact to avoid a security breach. Then there is a schedule backups, that is you can schedule the backups to external hard drives or in the cloud in order to keep your data stored safely. And the right frequency is weekly, but you can do incremental backups every few days. Act of human errors or the failures, which include the acts done without the malicious intent, can also be a possibility, caused by inexperience, improper training, incorrect assumptions, and other circumstances. So employees are sometimes the greatest threats to information security, that are closest to the organizational data. And employees mistakes can easily lead to following: what revelation of employee mistake can reveal the classified data, they can enter the erroneous data, accident deletion or modified data, storage of data unprotected areas, and failure to protect the information. So many of these threats can be prevented with controls. So now how do we actually control? Let us see one before we go to that. So now, how these data breach or protection will compromises our intellectual property. As we know, IP is the ownership of the ideas and the control over a tangible or the virtual representation of those ideas. And many organizations in business create the IP. They trade, it may be a trade secret or a copyright or a trademark or any patent. So most of the common IP breaches involve software piracy, and therefore we should have watchdog organizations will investigate. What is the Software and Industry Association is also there. There is a Business Software Alliance is there. So also we have an enforcement of copyright has been attempted with technical security mechanism. There is an espionage or trespass. What is an espionage? Espionage or trespass, it is a broad category of activity that breach the confidentiality, unauthorized access of information, competitive intelligence versus a espionage, and shoulder surfing can occur at any place a person is accessing the confidential information. And controls implemented to mark the boundaries of the organization's virtual territory, giving notice to trespassers that they are encroaching the organization's cyberspace. And hackers use the skill, guile, and the fraud to steal the property of somebody else. See, what is the shoulder? What is a shoulder surfing? Shoulder surfing takes place in many forms. Somebody may not be obvious. Okay. Then trespass. That is generally two skill levels among the hackers. One is an expert hacker who develop the software scripts and codes and exploits, and usually a master of many skills, and will often create an attack software and share with others. Script kiddies means hackers of limited skill. They use an expert written software to exploit a system and do not usually fully understand the system they hack. The other terms for systems rule breakers are cracker. That is an individual who cracks or removes the protection designed to prevent the unauthorized duplication, and preaker, that is hacks the public telephone network. So the traditional hacker profile will be age 13 to 18. The male with limited parental supervision spends all his free time at the computer. A modern hacker profile is around 12 to 60, male or female, unknown background with varying technological levels, maybe internal or external. So now, what is an information extortion? It is is an attacker or formerly trusted insider stealing the information from a computer system and demanding the compensation for its return or non-use. So extortion found in credit card number thefts and so on. Then what is a sabotage or vandalism? Individual or group of people who want to deliberately sabotage the operations of a computer systems or business, or perform the acts of vandalism to either destroy.
So we wanted to ask the marks of the papers were checked.
Which one?
So AI answer.
Not yet started.
And for the internal stuff, has the number.
They will announce it.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
So they perform the acts of vandalism to either destroy an asset or damage the image of an organization. And these threats can range from petty vandalism to an organized sabotage. And organizations rely on image, so web defacing can lead to dropping consumer confidence and sales. And rising threat of hacktivist or a cyber activist operation. The most extreme version is the cyber terrorism. So illegal taking of another property, that is a deliberate act of theft. That is illegal taking of another property, physical, electronic, or individual. The value of the information suffers when it is copied and taken away without the owner's knowledge. And physical theft can be controlled. There are wide varieties of measure used locked doors, whereas electronic theft is more complex problem to manage and control. Okay. So for example, internet service issues. Loss of internet service can lead to a considerable loss in the availability of information. And organizations have sales staff and telecommuters working at remote locations. And when an organization outsources its web service servers, the outsourcer assumes the responsibility for all internet services and the hardware and the operating system software used to operate the website. The communication and other services, other utility services have a potential impact, and among these are the telephones, water and wastewaters, trash pickup, cable television, natural or propane gas or custodial services. These are many, and the threat of loss of service can lead to inability to function properly. Then the voltage levels can increase, decrease, or cease. Like it can be a spike or a momentary increase, or it can be a surge or a prolonged increase, sag or a momentary low voltage, brownout, a prolonged drop, fault or a momentary loss of power, and blackout is a prolonged loss. So electronic equipment is susceptible to fluctuations. Controls can be applied to manage the power quality. The deliberate software attacks. So when an individual or a group designs software, when an individual or a group designs a software to attack these systems, they create malicious code or a software called malware, and they are designed to damage, destroy, or deny the service to the target systems. So this include macro virus, boot virus, worms, Trojan horses, logic bombs, backdoor or trapdoors, denial of service attacks, polymorphics, or hoaxes. So the other deliberate software attacks include the viruses is a computer program that attaches itself to an executable file or an application. It can replicate itself usually through an executable program attached in an email. The keywords is attaches. The virus cannot stand on its own. So you must prevent the viruses from being installed in your computers in your organizations. How there and there is no foolproof method for preventing them from attaching themselves to your computer. Antivirus software companies virus signature files against the programming code of known viruses. Regularly update the virus signature files is very crucial. A worm is a computer program that replicates and propagates itself without having to attach itself to a host. Most
सर मेरा प्रोजेक्ट का आपने बोला था रिपोर्ट दिखाना है, क्या आज दिखा सकते हैं?
हाँ, आफ्टरनून
आपको कितने बजे?
कब फ्री हो?
मैं पूरे समय फ्री आफ्टरनून को
3 बजे.
3 बजे.
So most infamous worms are Code Red or Nimda, and code businesses millions of dollars in a damage as a result of regular lost productivity and computer downtime, and the time spent in recovering the lost data, reinstalling the programmers operating system, hiring or contracting IT person. So another one is the Trojan programs. They disguise themselves as useful computer programs or applications and can install a backdoor or a rootkit on a computer. And backdoors or rootkits are the computer programs that give attackers a means for regaining the access to the attacked computers later. So, for example, there is a Trojan horse arrives via email or a software such as free games. And Trojan horse is activated when the software or the attachment is executed. And Trojan horse releases its payload, monitors the computer's activity, installs the backdoor, and transmits the information to a hacker. So, there are a lot of deliberate software attacks. One is the challenge Trojan programs that use common ports such as TCP/IP or UPD53 are more difficult to detect. Many software firewalls can recognize the port scanning program or information leaving a questionable port. However, they prompt user to allow or disallow, and users are not aware. Educate your network users, and many Trojan programs use standard ports to conduct their exploits. Then spyware. A spyware program spends information from the infected computer to a person who initiated the spyware program on your computer, and spyware program can register each keystones entered. And adware is the main purpose is to determine the user's purchasing habits so that the web browsers can display the advertisements tailored to that user. So it will slow down the computers running on, and adware sometimes displays a banner that notifies the user of it. So both the programs can be installed without the user being aware of their presence. And how do we protect against the deliberate software attacks? Educating your users. Many US government organizations make security awareness programs mandatory, and many private sector companies are also following their examples. And email monthly security updates to all the employees, update virus signature files as soon as possible and protect a network by implementing a firewall and avoiding fear tactics. Like your approach to users or potential customers should be promoting awareness rather than instilling fear. And when training users, be sure to build on the knowledge they already have. Forces of nature, or it is also called force majeure or act of God, are dangerous because they are unexpected and can occur with very little warning and can disrupt not only the lives of individual but also the storage, transmission, and use of information. It includes fire, flood, earthquake, lightning, as well as volcanic eruption and insect infestations. Since it is not possible to avoid many of these threats, management must implement controls to limit the damage and also prepare contingency plans for continued operations. Situations of product or services are not delivered as expected, and information system depends on many interdependent support systems and three sets of service issues that dramatically affect the availability of information and systems. They are called internet service, communications, and power irregularities. Technical hardware failures are errors to occur when manufacturer distributes to users equipments containing the flaws, and these defects can cause the system to perform outside of expected parameters, resulting in unreliable service or lack of availability. And some errors are terminal, in that they result in the unrecoverable loss of the equipment, and some errors are intermittent in that they only periodically manifest themselves, resulting in faults that are not easily repeated. So, technical hardware failures or errors. This category of threats comes from purchasing a software with unrevealed faults, and large quantities of computer code are written, debugged, published, and sold only to determine not all the bugs were resolved. And sometimes unique combination of certain software and hardware reveal the new bugs. And sometimes these items are not errors but are purposeful shortcuts left by the programmers for honest or dishonest reasons. Then technological obsolescence. So when the infrastructure becomes antiquated or outdated, it leads to unreliable or untrustworthy systems. And the management must recognize that when the technology becomes outdated, there is a risk of loss of data integrity to threats and attacks. Ideally, proper planning by management should prevent the risk from the technology obsolescence. But when the obsolescence is identified, management must take action. And what are the attacks? An attack is the deliberate act that exploits the vulnerability, and it is accomplished by a threat agent to damage or steal an organization's information or physical asset. An ex An exploit is a technique to compromise a system. A vulnerability is an identified weakness of controlled system whose controls are not present or no longer effective. And an attack is then the use of an exploit to achieve the compromise of a control system. So there is a malicious code. This kind of attack includes execution of viruses, worms, Trojan horses, and active web scripts with the intent to destroy or steal the information. The state of the art in attacking the systems in 2002 is the multi-vector worm using up to 6 attack vectors to exploit in a varieties of vulnerabilities. Okay. With variety of gains commonly found in information systems. Okay. So these are all some of the replication attacks, IP scan attack. Okay. So the infected system scans random or local range of IP addresses and targets any of the several vulnerabilities known to hackers or left over from previous exploits such as code red, back orifice, or pigeon box. And web browsing, if the infected system has right access to any web page, it makes all the web content files infectious so that the users who browse to those pages become infected. Then virus, each infected machines infects certain common executable or script files or all the computers to which it can write with the virus code that can cause infections. Then shares, using the vulnerabilities in the file system and the way many organizations configure them, it copies the viral component to all the locations it can. And mass mail, by sending an email infections to the addresses found in the infected system address book, copies of the infections are sent to many users whose mail reading programs are automatically run the program and infect the system. Similarly, SNMP, oh, okay, is also vulnerability. So what are the attack? Like IP scan attack, compromised systems scan the random or the local range of IP addresses and targets any of the several vulnerabilities known to attackers are left over from previous exploits. Web browsing, if the infected system has right access to any web pages, it makes all the web content files infectious so that the users who browse to these pages become infected. And virus, each infected machine infects certain common executable or script files on all computers to which it can write with the virus code that can cause the infection. Unprotected shares, using files using file shares to copy the viral component to all the reachable locations. Mass mail, that is sending email infection to addresses found in the address book. Then simple network management protocol vulnerabilities used to compromise and infect. Access, a more devious approach to attacking computer systems, is the transmission of virus hoax with real viruses. So there is something backdoors and using a known or previously unknown or newly discovered access mechanism, an attacker can give access to a system or network resource. Password crack means attempting to reverse a calculate a password. Brute force means the application computing and network resources to try every possible combination of options of a password. Dictionary means the dictionary password attack narrows the field by selecting a specific accounts to attack and uses a list of commonly used password to guide their guesses. Denial of service, attacker sends a large number of connection or information requests to a target. So many requests are made that the target systems cannot handle them successfully along with other legitimate requests for service and may result in a system crash or merely an inability to perform an ordinary function. Then distributed denial of service is an attack in which the coordinated system of requests is launched against the target from many locations at the same time. So in a denial of service attack, the hacker compromises the system and uses the system to attack the target computer, flooding with more requests for the service than the target can handle. Similarly, snooping, a technique used to gain the unauthorized access where the intruder sends the messages to the computer with an IP address indicating that the message is coming from a trusted host. And man in the middle attack, a attacker sniffs the packets from the network and modifies them and inserts them back to the network. Spam means an unsolicited commercial email, while many consider the spam as a nuisance rather than an attack. These are some of the examples. Like we have mail bombing, sniffers, social. These are mail bombing is another form of an email attack that is also a distributed denial of service. Sniffer is a program or the device that can monitor the data traveling over the network. Sniffers can be used for both for legitimate network management functions and for stealing the information from the network. Social engineering means within the context of information security, the process of using a social skill to convince the people to reveal the access credentials and other vulnerable information. So, so people are the weakest link. You can have the best technology, firewall, intrusion detection system, biometric devices, and somebody can call us unsuspecting employees. So that's what she wrote. Okay, so brick attack, the best configured firewall in the world that can stand up to the well placed. Then there is a buffer overflow. An application occurs when more data is sent to a buffer than it can handle. Okay, same thing. Ping of death attacks. It is a type of DOS attack where the attacker can create an ICMP packet that is larger than the maximum. And the large packet is again fragmented to smaller packets and reassembled at its destination. Timing attack is relatively low, works by exploring the contents of web browsers cache and can allow the collection of information and access to password protected attacks. So these are some of the examples, and I think with this I will end my presentation.